I said we wanted to start with some positives, so we'll start with the Yankees. And even more positive, Mike Messina is going to be joining us for this segment. So, Mike, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Can't wait to be able to be in the library with you guys doing the show until you get back to the station. So I'm excited to be here, though.
Yeah. So some good stuff. Looking forward to having you today. And so we will start with the Yankees here. Huge series out west in Oakland, but overall this last week, just only positives for the Yankees. You look after that Field of Dreams game, crushing loss, and it feels like that was one of 15 this year. Like, you can really point to this team and how many losses they've had that they just bounced back from. They still haven't lost since then. As of now, the win streak continues to go on, 12 at the time of this recording. Some games against the Braves, it didn't look like they had a chance in. They're able to win those. Andrew Heaney's pitched solid. They win a game in Oakland where they go up 6-0. They blow that whole lead. You mentioned in the intro, Nick, Tyone does not have it. And so it's very easy to just crawl down and let the A's kind of come back and take over the complete game. But the bullpen, once again, is a story. It's a positive. They're able to ride the ship. And then clutch hitting, which you kind of talked about. It's not even just the home runs. It's big hits with guys on base. So, Mike, I'll start with you just to get you involved here. Overall, what have you been seeing from the Yankees recently? Not even just, let's say, this win streak, but just kind of post-trade deadline, this new kind of, there's a new energy. It's clear. So what have you been seeing from this team?
Yeah, really from the trade deadline, right when they got Anthony Rizzo and Joey Gallo, the team kind of started clicking. They had so much chemistry to lead off. And you mentioned the Field of Dreams game, the last time they lost. There has been so much energy and great atmosphere within that clubhouse since then. And it comes off the bat of clutch hitting. Aaron Judge, people are always saying he's not clutch. He can't hit in big situations. He comes up last night, has a double down the right, maybe a single down the right field line off Romo, and then comes up in the ninth inning, gets an RBI right there. The hitting the Yankees have been doing lately is amazing. And I feel like that's the main reason why they're kind of on this winning streak. Yes, the bullpen has been pitching amazing, and the starters have been doing good, aside from Tyone, especially last night. But the hitting, man, that they have been doing everything they need to be. Not only Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton has been hitting the ball well. Luke Voit has been raking. Joey Gallo's kind of struggling, but he's going to be able to pick it up in September. I have a good feeling about that. Gleyber Torres is going to be coming back soon. He's starting his rehab assignment. So there's so many more things that are positive for the Yankees right now that are coming along. And really, I see no end for this. The Yankees' ceiling right now is endless, and I'm excited to see where they can go, especially if they keep performing and contributing like the way they have been over the last month and a half.
Yeah, I like where they're headed offensively. That has to be something that's very encouraging because the hitting really struggled prior to this 12-game winning streak. I mean, it was up and down, and we talked about this in the open a little bit, but how can a team with this type of lineup continue to struggle the way that they are struggling on the whole of the season? Like, they've got Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton and Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo and DJ LeMahieu and Torres and Voit in and out of the lineup and Urshela and all this stuff. How can they not be this offensive juggernaut that you just counted on being the New York Yankees again in 2021? But to see them pick it up offensively has been really encouraging. But to me last night, it's the bullpen. Because that has been, I think, an underrated aspect of their struggles in 2020 and again in the struggles in 2021. They went on a ridiculous losing streak last year in the shortened season. And yes, it was the pitching that struggled a little bit, but they were blowing leads the way they're blowing leads this year. And then they go back and they didn't do a ton to address it in the offseason. And the bullpen on the whole continues to struggle. And then they've made some moves at the trade deadline. And a side note here before we continue, Brian Cashman gets an A+ because this has been outstanding, from the additions to the lineup, to the clubhouse, to the starting rotation, to the bullpen. I mean, the Yankees aced this trade deadline better than really anyone, maybe the Dodgers. Maybe you're going to tell me because of just getting Max Scherzer and Trey Turner, but from a volume and turning your season around perspective, the Yankees are the clear winners of the trade deadline, and it's not even close. But just to see their bullpen continue to improve, and Aroldis Chapman last night, that's huge because he is a guy that the Yankees need. He absolutely needs to reclaim some semblance of his form. He is a guy who's going to close games for them, whether you like it or not. He is getting paid the dollars to close baseball games for the New York Yankees, and that's what they're going to do. I was a little bit surprised, to tell you the truth, to see him in that spot last night. I thought that Chad Green was going to be in that game, especially when you see him warming up in that ninth inning with the anticipation that the game might be tied, and then Wade steals second with a throwing error to third. Judge comes up with the clutch hit, and then boom, Chapman's in the game. But that's a huge part of this. They need to find ways to close out games. And Jonathan Loaizaga has been at the forefront of that. He's been excellent. Chad Green has been very good on the whole of the season. And now you're looking at, can Aroldis Chapman, and when they get Zach Britton back again, can they do enough? And last night that was the case. So when they are putting these pieces together, they're winning 12 in a row. And this is a team that looks like it's as equipped as anybody to make a run into the playoffs.
Yeah, there's a lot to go over with the Yankees. And it's also like you mentioned A+. I remember like even before the deadline, Cashman was like, yeah, we flat out stink. Like we suck. And for him to acknowledge it is one thing, but to actually go out and make the moves, like just the parallel to the Mets, like their, interim GM, Zach Scott said like, yeah, we're a mediocre team right now. They didn't address it the way the Yankees did. And the thing is, it's not just the Gallo and the Rizzo moves. I know people point to those, but like Rizzo, first few games was a godsend, right? Carried them to some wins versus Miami. He goes on the COVID list, tough break there, hasn't hit since he came back. Really hasn't hit at all. Yeah. Joey Gallo has went through his struggles. I'm a huge Joey Gallo fan. Mike said he thinks he's going to get it going. Completely agree. Home run yesterday. Nice to see. He hasn't like set the world on fire. It's been the under the radar moves. Mike Tauchman was a guy who in 2019, everyone loved him, and they DFA him. They trade him for Wandy Peralta, who in the month of August hasn't given up a run. He's been, their best reliever hasn't given up a run. He's closed 3 or 4 games, getting huge outs. Got the one in Atlanta, goes behind 3-1 to Freddie Freeman, bases loaded.
Took some guts in that at bat.
Chapman puts him in an impossible spot. 8 pitch at bat. Freeman's the reigning MVP, battles. The guts with Wandy Peralta are there. Clay Holmes, a guy, he has a 6 ERA with the Pirates, worst team in baseball. Like, what are you doing, Cashman? This is your move.
That's what I said when they traded for him. I was like, what is it? What's going on here?
And yeah, Alex knows I was big on him. He had really good peripherals, but at the same time, the Yankees were never a team before Matt Blake got here where you're the reclamation, you flip the pitcher. And that's the difference with this team because Clay Holmes now, you see that stuff. It's big league stuff. That sinker, that slider, struck out 3 yesterday. It plays big time. And it's just like Jonathan Loaizaga guy. He, top prospect, really struggled as a starter. That's a guy who I think, not to harp on Larry Rothschild too much, who just lost his job with the Padres. That's a guy who doesn't become this good if he's still the pitching coach. Matt Blake
I'm with you.
Deserves a ton of credit for what he's been able to do. A Jameson Taillon, I know he struggled yesterday, but he went 10 straight starts. The Yankees won. AL Player of the Month in July. He had like a 6 ERA the first month and a half of the year. So it's the turnarounds in season, and it's also the in-house guys, right? Stan picked it up on fire. Luke Voigt won Player of the Week last week. Now he can't get in the lineup. I think that's how much, he's he might be the first player ever to win Player of the Week and be benched the first 3 games the next week without an injury. He's supposed to be in the lineup the rest of this series, which is very good for the Yankees. You give Stanton some time in the outfield, let him DH because he's now your hot sitter. Home runs in 3 straight, missiles. Like he's just absolutely seeing the
one he hit last night was incredible.
Yeah, and when he's on, like when he's off, he looks really bad. The swing's really bad. But when he's on, it's just ridiculous. The line drives, how the ball carries. So I think when you look at it, it's obviously Cashman believed in the team enough to supplement, bring in some guys. Andrew Heaney, all these other guys I just mentioned. But it also, I think we said, I was on this show a few times, maybe it was the nightly show with you, the guys that were here needed to pick it up. Like it wasn't going to be just these newcomers. And that's what they have done. And that's kind of why the Yankees have been able to figure out their season to be 23 games over 500 before the end of September when you are a 500 team in July. It really is just like an all-time in-season turnaround.
It's interesting that you mentioned to Matt Blake's involvement in all of this and how the Yankees have taken on some of the quote unquote reclamation projects and have found success with some of those players, because I remember sitting there as an interested viewer of the Yankees and saying, how come the Yankees don't seem to turn around pitchers the way Houston or the Rays had been in the last couple of years? Garrett Cole goes to Houston and, catches fire. And Justin Verlander was a guy who you're thinking is headed for retirement in Detroit and then finds a second life in Houston. And the Rays can be said the same way with Tyler Glasnow, who just exploded onto the scene after getting traded to Tampa Bay. And the Yankees don't have those types of stories until this year. And last year was a tough first year for Matt Blake to just get his, it's COVID, 60 games. And what are you going to implement when you're not actually physically with the pitchers? I mean, come on. So it's going to be a really difficult ask for him. But in his first full season in a real year, it has blown us away, and the improvement has been tangible. This has been the pitching staff that the Yankees were looking for. And you know what? A ton of credit to him, because we talked about how the hitting has been a little bit below expectation. The pitching has carried them, and nobody saw that coming into this year. There is no way. If you had told me that the Yankees pitching was going to be the reason that they're, on a 12-game winning streak, I would have called you crazy, because the way Jamison Tyone looked at the beginning of this year, it was just, there's no way. I mean, the guy didn't get an out in Philadelphia. He didn't get out the first inning. What are we talking about? So it's just amazing to see these turnarounds, and there's still work to be done. There is still some bullpen that, needs some ironing out. But for the most part, the way that the Yankees have really been able to manage, and in particular, the starting rotation, has been really impressive. And that's why they're on their way to the postseason.
And Nick, you mentioned the pitching, even from people who haven't really gotten their chance really to perform yet. Steven Riddings, Luis Hill, no runs given up in his first 3 starts in major leagues. Like, that is incredible. And that's something the Yankees need going forward. I mean, I'm not sure the status of Luis Hill and how he's going to be able to fit into this starting rotation or even get thrown into the bullpen. I'm not sure about that. But if these guys can keep stepping up, that just takes that much weight off the starter shoulders where they can come in, get the job done in clutch situations. And if they can keep doing that, they're set up perfectly. And I think they're going to be able to, especially Steven Riddings throwing over 100 miles an hour, hitting his spots, hitting corners, Luis Hill doing all the same stuff, Loaizaga throwing heat, doing everything that he's supposed to do. It's really amping up to be something that they always wanted to be from their bullpen, and what fans, the organization expects from the bullpen. They have a high-class bullpen, a high-class starting rotation, and they're performing at that level right now, and they need to keep that up in order to not only get this wild card spot, but maybe even win the division if they can get some games on the Rays. So who knows?
Yeah, that's the frustrating thing. I think that's a good pivot here, because while this win streak's been awesome, you expect to make a 12-game win streak. They've been up 2 games on the Rays. You expect to be right in there, rattling off 12 straight. The Rays just don't lose. And it's scary because Yankees have been in the wild card before, right? 2017, 2018, 2015, even though it was a different team. But they've had some recent success, but it's 1 game for your season. We know Garrett Cole. I feel great about him taking the mound. But still, it's 9 innings for your season. And that's the frustrating thing. This whole turnaround that we're talking about, it could be completely wiped out. It could be a failure the whole season if they don't play well in 9 innings. One other guy who I think from the pitching side, Nestor Cortes Jr.
Yeah.
Just a marvel, because you look at his stuff. He throws 88 to 91 miles an hour on the fastball. Spin rate, not impressive at all. Had a 5 ERA with the Yankees in 2019. Was really a joke of Yankees Twitter. Goes to Seattle, doesn't have it, comes back. He's been way more than you could have ever asked for. 2.5 ERA in 7 starts and 15 total games, 50 plus innings. You look at the point where the season kind of got turned around. It was after they blew game 1 of the doubleheader versus the Mets. He comes in, he starts game 2. It was his second career start, Sunday Night Baseball. Mets have a chance to sweep the Yankees, take him under 500. He's able to stop. He goes 3-4 innings of 1-run ball. And since then he's been stretched out 7 innings in his most recent start. And now the Yankees trust him, and you can see it the way they manipulated this rotation for the A's series. You talked about Luis Hill, Mike. He can't get in the rotation anymore. That's just the reality of it. It's unfortunate. Corey Kluber's back Monday, so that complicates things even more. But Nestor Cortes is a guy they want to keep. They trust him in these big games. Pitching, starting against the Astros, starting against the Rays, White Sox, where he pitched really well in all those starts. He still hasn't had that big blunder. So having him as a 4 or a 5 come playoff time, who knows if he's in the rotation by then. He could be a weapon out of the pen. Corey Kluber back Monday. Luis Severino, we got good news from him, right? They expected that his season would be over after another setback, but he's began throwing again. So we'll see what happens. And the pitching is at an all-time high for the Yankees.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they're going to utilize everybody coming back. Could Luis Severino potentially be a bullpen piece when he comes back? And how long is it going to take him to stretch out? Whereas if you're just going to go and use Luis Severino for 2 or 3 innings at a time, is that going to be what the Yankees need? Because you've got so many arms in the fold. And I don't know that the major league tenure for Luis Gil is done for the Yankees in 2021 either. I mean, I know that there's not necessarily a set spot for him in the rotation, but it's hard to ignore 15 innings of shutout ball to start your Major League Baseball career. So he's a guy who's got great stuff and could potentially be a bullpen weapon for them, although I don't know how well you want to mess with what he's got in terms of a routine. But this is a guy who has certainly come up and shown no fear and been comfortable. So I think it stands to reason that he might be able to adjust reasonably well to the bullpen if asked to do that. So the Yankees have a lot of options and a lot of very good problems to have. You talk about the pitching. Let's go to the starting lineup. What do the Yankees do when Gleyber Torres comes back? Because Andrew Velazquez has done nothing to lose the starting shortstop role. And you know, he does not hit the way that Gleyber Torres does when Gleyber Torres is right. He has not been right this year, but the defense is very hard to ignore. The speed is hard to ignore. This is a team that's playing with speed now. They're stealing bases. That's a part of the Yankees that has been one of the driving forces behind this 180-degree turnaround into the second half of the season. And I think you lose some of that when Andrew Velazquez steps out of the lineup. I don't think the Yankees are going to say, no, Gleyber Torres, you're going to not be in the fold for the rest of the season. He's going to come back. He's going to play. But it's going to be tough. Tyler Wade the same way, because eventually the time is going to run out. The playing time is going to run out for these types of guys. And, you know, Tyler Wade, again, even as a pinch runner, making an impact. The most runs scored as a pinch runner in the major leagues this year.
Yeah, and you look at Tyler Wade, too. Like you mentioned yesterday, pinch runs. Steal second, that wins him the game. It's the little stuff that I think the hitting was never there with him, but he was still on this team, you know, all the way through, right? Like since 2016 on, never hitting. Now he's up to 278 in there. Like I know averages and everything, but for him, he's just singles, steal second. Yankees lead, you mentioned the stolen bases, lead baseball in the second half. It's a rejuvenated speed. It's something they definitely didn't have in the first half, but it's a great problem to have because it's a real problem. Like there are too many players for these spots. I know the rosters expand to 28 September, but that's traditionally you're going to bring in arms. Are you going to take up, 3 or 4 spots on bench middle infielders, right? Like Tyler Wade and Velazquez pretty much do similar things, except Velazquez just isn't as versatile. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. Just to wrap up Yankees talk here, because I've seen this a little bit, the peaking too early question. Mike, I want to start with you because I've seen people say like, you prefer this to be later, Yankees are peaking too early. I completely disagree. I want to know what you think, Mike. So, are you worried about this team kind of playing their hottest? Because they're not going to win 13 straight ever again throughout the season. I think we all know that. Do you think this is just them peaking too early, or do you think it's them kind of realizing their full potential as a baseball team?
No, I think it came at the perfect time. They're realizing how they can perform as a team. Look, they wouldn't be 3 games ahead of the Red Sox for the wild card if they didn't go on this 12-game winning streak right now. It happened at the right time. I am worried about, though, Aroldis Chapman coming back and struggling the way he is. Last night obviously came through huge in that win last night, but he needs to get back to his normal form. He needs to get back to blowing hitters away, not trying to look too pretty out there, just doing what he does best, hitting his spots. His off-speed pitch is amazing. He has to get back to that in order for the Yankees to succeed, in my opinion. I don't think this Yankees team can succeed in the playoffs without their all-star closer performing at the level that he's supposed to play at. They're paying him a ton of money to do it. And without Chapman being that guy, I'm not sure how sustainable that all this winning is for the Yankees moving forward. But no, I completely disagree, Ryan. I think that this happened at the perfect time. They wouldn't be in this position without this win streak. And who knows, I'm not sure how many more games they can win in a row. Obviously, last night they blew a 6-0 lead. But I'm excited to see what they can do going forward. Obviously, you guys mentioned Gleyber Torres is coming back, and we don't know what's going to happen with Andrew Velazquez or Tyler Wade, who have both been playing phenomenal, but there's just not enough room on this roster for them. And maybe that's going to be a struggle for the Yankees, getting Torres back and trying to work back to his performance as well. And he might come back slumping a little bit. So we'll have to see. But I think this came at the perfect time. They would not be in this situation and even be in a wild card spot without this winning streak they're on. So good on them, and I hope it can continue. And I'm not sure the argument on how they're peaking too early. I mean, you have to peak at some point in the season, and just because you peak now doesn't mean it can't continue. But I think it happened the perfect time for them.
Were they not supposed to win 12 in a row? I don't know that I understand exactly what the argument would be about peaking. I guess maybe you want them to win 12 in a row in the postseason. I think that's probably the best time to win 12 in a row, but save that. I don't think there's ever a bad time to win 12 games in a row. They've been playing really good baseball. They're coming down the stretch. And regardless of whether it was the right time or not, they needed to start winning because time was running out. And now they've gotten themselves to a point where you feel pretty good about the idea that they're going to be in the postseason in some capacity. And if they can continue this run that they've been on, potentially challenge for the division. We talked about how difficult it's been to make up the ground on the Rays, but were they not supposed to win 12 in a row? I'm not sure I understand that one at all. They've played really good baseball. It's always a good time to play very good baseball for the New York Yankees, and they needed to do that because they were running out of time.
Yeah, it's like when you go, Mike.
It's like people are asking for the team to lose so they can save their wins for the playoffs, but they have to win in order to get to the playoffs in the first place. So I'm not understanding why or how this is just not a good time to win 12 games in a row.
There's never a bad time to win.
And also, like, they played 500 baseball for 50% of the season. Like, this is a great thing that now, second half of the year, you have the best record in baseball, which I'm not sure Giants might, but like, there's no negatives to this. So, I think when you look at it, like, there's a lot of questions still. I think the Chapman question you proposed, Mike, I think I even said that like the other day, like, I can't see this team going far with this Aroldis Chapman. You're not going to get the Wandy Peraltas to save the day every single time they step out there. You're going to need him to, he showed good stuff yesterday, got into a little trouble, but you're going to need him to pick it up.